Hey, what's up guys? I just pulled this knife out of my knife steel archive, which is basically just a box where I keep interesting knife steels and knife designs that I came across over the years, and Rex 45 is certainly one of those interesting steels. So in this video I want to talk about what Rex 45 is, how it performs, how it sharpens, and who it is for. So let's start off with what Rex 45 is. Well, it's a high hardness, high alloy steel. High hardness probably being the most important attribute of this steel in my opinion. So in different industries, Rex 45 is apparently used in machines that run really hot and have to maintain their hardness at the same time. So that's what it was developed for. So this steel has a ton of cobalt in it to achieve high hardness levels. Let's speak about the hardness in knives. Usually I think it's about 65 to 67 where it could optimally be in terms of the hardness level. I think in Spyderco knives it's typically right around 64 from what I've heard from other people testing their blades. This particular blade has not been tested. Maybe we'll do so in the future and then I can give you an update. But from using it and sharpening it, I can definitely say this is a very hard steel. So yeah, 64 HRC, that could be very well, within that range that this one is heat treated in. Maybe even higher than that. So yeah, let's talk about the high alloy steel family. High alloy steels, typically, they're good in edge retention, good in toughness, not so good in corrosion resistance. The most well-known steels in that family, probably D2 and A2. A2 being the tougher one and D2 being the higher one in terms of edge retention, right? Now, within that family, you also have CPM M4 made by the same maker, Crucible, and it was made to have like really fine and hard carbide to boost the performance in terms of edge retention and also a little bit in edge stability. Rex 45 is often described as like a high cobalt M4. Some people say it's even an overrated M4 version, which I would disagree with, and we're gonna talk about that a little bit later. But yeah, saying it's an M4 with a high cobalt amount is definitely true. They are very similar in terms of their composition, other than the cobalt, but the cobalt allows it to get higher in hardness. So I would say, like from personal experience, Rex 45 is typically a little bit harder in knife steels on the market than the typical M4 or the average M4 that you will see. So Rex 45 is basically an equivalent to Ude Holm's Venades 30, Bowler S590, or Japanese Hitachi HAP 40. Now, Venades 30 and Bowler S590, I have never seen a knife in those steels, so I cannot really speak for them. If you know a knife in one of those steels, leave it in the comments down below. It would be very interesting to see that. Now, Japanese HAP 40 has been used by Spyderco quite a bit in sprint runs in the past, but never as a mono steel as far as I know. So usually you had a lamination where you had the hard HAP 40 in the middle and like a 420J or a 420 steel on the outsides. So Rex 45 is basically a mono steel HAP 40 for Spyderco, which is also why we have the same burnt orange scales on these knives than we have in the HAP 40 sprint runs. From what I've seen in other people's testing, though, Rex 45 performs a lot better than HAP 40, and that could be due to the high hardness. So maybe Spyderco just heat treated the Rex 45 blades to a higher hardness level than their laminated HAP 40s. Which is what I would suggest, that this is probably the reason we can see a performance difference. So Rex 45 usually has more edge retention than HAP 40. So let's talk about the comparison to M4, since this is basically M4 with high cobalt amounts, and some people say it's an overrated M4. I think it usually performs better. I think it feels harder than most M4 blades that I've ever seen. I think it's better in edge stability for that reason. And yeah, so I would say it performs better in terms of edge retention and edge stability than M4, although they are very close to each other. We have to, of course, take that in mind. Now, the comparison to other blade steels in terms of that family, the high alloy family, I guess we have Rex 121 at the highest possible edge retention in the family, and we have K390, which there's a pretty big gap between Rex 121 and K390, although K390 is an insane steel. And then I think right under K390, maybe even on the same level, if sharpened or ground to the same thinness behind the edge, I think is Rex 45. I would say it's very, very close to Rex 45. In my testing, there was barely a difference. I think there were 30 cuts of difference in my rope cut tests, which I can leave you those videos in the description box down below. But there was like 30 cuts difference between K390 and Rex 45, and this blade is quite a bit thicker than the K390 that I tested in terms of behind the edge thickness. So the behind the edge thickness on this guy in particular is 23 thousandths, which is 0.55 millimeters. So if it was at the same levels of thinness, I think it can perform right at that level with K390 in terms of edge retention. So yeah, and right under Rex 45 and K390, I would say is M4, and then Kruger, and then Freebie. So in that particular order. So you can see in terms of edge retention, pretty good steel. It's right in that mix with those other high alloy PM steels. Now in terms of edge stability, obviously the toughest in this family are going to be Freebie, Kruger, and then right below, I would say M4, K390, and Rex 45 are about on the same level, although I would say because of the high hardness, some steels, they keep their edge toughness because they roll over to one side or the other. They're very flexible. But Rex 45 is one of those steels that has a really, really high hardness, and therefore the strength of that cutting edge is very good because it does not want to roll to one side or the other. So it's very, very stable at the edge. And if it chips, it does chip on a very microscopic level is what I've noticed. So I have another Rex 45 blade in the past, and I did a lot of twist cuts with that knife and also with this one, and both of them performed super, super well in terms of edge stability. With this one, I even cut some sandstone, which is not the hardest stone, but it is stone, and it didn't chip or dull, quite at all. It was very resistant to cutting stone, which is, insane. So this knife, because of its high hardness, I think it has a really good edge stability. In my opinion, better edge stability and better edge retention than M4 steel. So yeah, in terms of edge stability, edge toughness, it's very good also. In terms of rust resistance, well, I would say it's basically the same than the edge stability list that I gave you. So Freebie and Kruger are going to be better, and then K390 M4 and Rex 45 are going to be about at the same level in terms of rust resistance or stainlessness. So they are not super, super great. So if you do a lot of food cutting, especially the ones that contain a lot of salts, you will get the same type of patina that you will see in K390. So a very darkish patina with a lot of spots, and you will certainly see rust spots on Rex 45 as well as you do with K390 because it's not a stainless steel at all. Now, I would say it's not super bad either. I think it's, if you maintain it properly, as you can see, mine is really oily right now. So if I store it for longer periods of time, I definitely oil it. And other than that, you just wipe it clean and, maintain those rust spots. Sharpenability, I would say, is worse than with those other steels that I just mentioned. So again, Freebie and Kruger are going to be a lot easier to sharpen. And then I think M4 and K390 also going to be better to Rex 45, mainly because of that high hardness levels. It's not that the steel sharpens bad. I think it burrs, the burr forms nicely, and you can deburr it easily. But to get to that level, especially if you have to grind a lot of material away, it's going to be a little bit harder. So when I reprofiled this knife to 17 degrees for my cutting edge test, it was quite a burden to sharpen. So reprofiling the knife, I would only do once, and then I would just go ahead and maintain that cutting edge because it's just not going to be enjoyable. So yeah, but Rex 121, for instance, is a steel that's going to be even worse, right, in terms of sharpenability and also especially in toughness. So yeah, if you would compare it to Rex 121, I think Rex 45 is the better steels in terms of sharpenability, for the amount of edge retention, also in stainlessness, and definitely in toughness. So yeah, I'm personally not interested in a steel and like Rex 121, especially because of that, hard difficulties that you're gonna have with the sharpenability and the low edge stability. I'm not interested at all. So Rex 45, in my opinion, for a user steel is gonna be the better steel by far. So reprofiling is not that great. Polishing is very, very good and very, very easy though. I had no issues polishing this cutting edge on 9 micron and then on leather. And yeah, so currently I do run my own cutting edge and not a KME cutting edge on there anymore because I think it just works better. So I sharpened on a DMT diamond stone, Naniva diamond, whetstone, and Sharpal ceramic, and then on 9 micron and leather, and I think the polishing was taken really nicely by that steel. So it is a steel that can achieve, good levels of polishing, I would say. And yeah, currently this one is hair popping sharp, and it just glides through material with ease. This is it's a nice steel to polish and to maintain. It's not a nice steel to reprofile. So is it for the beginner or the advanced sharpener? I would say it's for the advanced sharpener if you like resharpen it like from scratch, like if the knife is like really, really dull or you want to reprofile it. But if you just want to maintain it, it's decently easy in maintaining it because the heat treatment seems to be very good on those Rex 45 sprint runs that Spyderco did in the past. So yeah, I guess it depends what type of, sharpening you want to do with it, whether you have to be experienced or not. Now, in terms of knife designs for that steel, I chose the Manix because, well, first of all, it was available on the secondary market, still had a factory edge, which I liked for my testing. And I think the Manix is a good design for a tougher steel. It's one of those tougher knives that's made to be used a little bit harder, and it has a very reliable locking system. I wish Spyderco would do that locking system in more knives. It's a good locking system. And yeah, the cutting edge is a little bit short, but other than that, it's a tough knife, and it performs well with a tough steel. So I think Rex 45 is a good steel for this type of knife design. I had a PM2 in Rex 45 before, was also very good, but probably couldn't be pushed to the limits that you can push this simply because of handle comfort. So I would choose a knife design that is suited for the harder cutting and usage. So to summarize, Rex 45, I think it's a fantastic steel in terms of edge retention, both in man-made abrasives and also in natural materials because of the high edge stability. So it's very, very stable at the edge, a lot more stable than people think it is. I think it performs better than M4 and HAB 40. And yeah, it is a very comparable steel to those steels though, like in terms of composition. A steel that comes close to it, probably K390 would be comparable to it as well. I think it sharpens worse than Kruger and K390 and M4, but the performance is certainly there and speaks for it. It's not the best at corrosion resistance, but that's to be expected in that family. It is a very, very fantastic steel. I'm really glad to have it. And yeah, I'm looking forward to do more testings on the steel in the future. Sadly, a discontinued steel, like a lot of PM steels currently at Spyderco in that family. So Spyderco seems to really go with K390 currently. They discontinued most of their M4, I think. M4 is no longer available. Rex 45 obviously isn't, HAB 40 isn't, and yeah, a lot of other steels are not going to be. Rex 121 also is not going to be available. So yeah, that's it about Rex 45. Thank you guys for watching, and maybe we see each other in another video. Goodbye.